Hi everyone, it's Emily bringing you another Grass River micro class on a beautiful day. I am right now in the northern fen of Grass River, which is kind of off the beaten track. It's a little bit of a slog to get here, but well worth it. It's gorgeous. This is my favorite place at Grass River just because it feels like so wild. It's such wilderness out here. So you might be wondering, what is a northern fen? It's a type of wetland, like I'm definitely in a wetland right now, got my boots on. A type of wetland that is characterized by a couple things. One being that the soil is pretty alkaline, which means that it's the opposite of acidic on the pH scale, so high pH numbers, and that comes from water, groundwater, seeping up through what's usually a limestone bedrock, and limestone has a lot of calcium carbonate in it, and so the groundwater brings that up with it. And then when algae decomposes in that calcium carbonate rich groundwater that is kind of inundating and flooding the fen, that creates a soil called marl, and so that soil is very alkaline too. And so, because geology always underlies biology, at least in terms of botany and zoology, that soil, that really alkaline marl soil, determines what kind of plants can live here. So as you can see, the fen is pretty dominated by low-lying plants, mostly sedges and rushes, but we definitely have a few shrubs in here and also some stunted conifers, mostly northern white cedar, tamarack, and a few random white pines in the distance. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring you guys out here today is because the northern fen is the third most abundant type of habitat we have at Grass River after the rich conifer swamp, so like the cedar swamp that we covered in the very first micro class way back in late March, I think. And then also after the mesic northern forest, so like your upland maple beech forests. So we have 185 acres of the northern fen at Grass River. And what's special about it is that it's highly diverse and it has a lot of really rare plants that live here, and so its floristic quality index is very high. Has a score of 68 point something, and anything over 50 is deemed as having considerable biological importance to the state, or biodiversity importance to the state. And that number is just calculated based on the species richness of an area, so how many species there are, times how specific the habitat tolerant or the habitat requirements of those species are. So in a fen high floristic quality index, we have lots of species that are all very specific in their requirements. Many of them only live in this type of habitat. So with that introduction, let's go explore and see what we can find today. So one thing that happens in ecosystems that are underwater all of the time is that the rate of plant decomposition is much slower, which means that the soil often is not as nutritious and it's missing a lot of important nutrients. Obviously we know that this soil is not missing calcium because that's what's brought up from the groundwater, but it is often lacking in nitrogen, which if you're a composter, you know, putting all your green vegetable scraps and that sort of thing in your compost is what gives the compost the nitrogen. So we're missing all of this like green plant material that is decomposing in these soils, which is why some plants in the fen have developed some pretty interesting adaptations to deal with this lack of nutrients. Here we have a pitcher plant. This is such a cool plant. So this is the flower, and it's not quite open yet. These wine colored, they're actually sepals, but they look like petals, will kind of flare out and open. But this is the leaf down here, and this plant is carnivorous. I think I talked about this in the very first microclass about cedar swamps, because they can live there too, but they love to live on sphagnum mounds, which are mounds covered in sphagnum moss that occur periodically throughout fens. So their leaves are highly modified, tube-shaped. They have downward pointing hairs on the inside. Often they smell a little stinky, and so they attract insects. And then the insects go inside and can't get back out because of the downward pointing hairs, and then the digestive juices in the bottom digest the insect. And let's see, don't think I can see anything in there right now, but yeah, this is a really, really cool plant. And then there's also a sundew, which is another carnivorous plant in fens. Bladderworts are another carnivorous plant. I saw one of those earlier this morning, but I'm not seeing any right now. But those are neat because they have these little sacs under the water that like are triggered by movement, and they trap tiny, tiny little like microscopic insects or other organisms. So pretty neat. We found a dragon's mouth orchid. I was not expecting, oh my gosh, there's an insect pollinating it. I was not expecting to find this today, but this is really neat and really special. Can you see that insect in there? It looks like a tiny bee. And that's exactly what that highly modified lowest petal is for. Many orchids have that. That's a characteristic of the family Orchidaceae. And that highly modified petal is called a lip or a labellum, and they do exactly that. They provide a landing pad for pollinators to enter to get the nectar, which of course also pollinates the plant when the insect gets a bunch of pollen all over it. Wow, that was really cool to see. All right, dragon's mouth orchid. So another neat feature of fens are these game trails that you often see crisscrossing across the fen. And it's just evidence that fens are really important for wildlife. It's, you know, really high quality habitat that, because it's very saturated with water, is often not as much of a victim of human encroachment as other ecosystems are in Michigan. So yeah, fens are havens for deer, black bear, river otters for sure, especially near streams, bobcat. A lot of our major megafauna definitely depend on fens, as well as smaller things like leopard frogs, eastern Massasaugas, which is our only type of venomous snake in Michigan. Lots of birds nest here, common yellowthroats, other species of warblers. Yeah, so if you take anything away from this microclass, take away the fact that this is a really high quality, highly diverse, very important to protect ecosystem. All right, everyone, thank you for joining me for this Grass River microclass, Northern Fen Exploration. So if you want to get out and enjoy fens on your own, Grass River Natural Area is a great place to come. We have two major fen complexes here. The first is on the south shore of Clam Lake, where I am right now, and then the other is immediately south-southwest of where Grass River leaves Lake Bel Air, and that is called Grass Island. And that's actually one of the largest northern fen complexes in northern Michigan, which is really neat. So both of those sites are best accessed by kayak, because bushwhacking is hard, but also, more importantly, for the ecosystem itself to minimize disturbance when you're trampling through. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions or want specific directions for how to access those sites via kayak. And again, there are no trails that go through them or no trails that go to them, so kayak is definitely the best option. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week. Thanks and bye.